Hello, everybody! Welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old players like to talk about D&D. My name is Shane, and to my left...
I'm Andrew.
Actually, that would be my right, technically. So basically we sit around here, we talk about D&D, and we've been playing for a very long time, and I'm not really the huge expert. I'm more of the player person, but Andrew is the professional DM, who, of course, is doing all kinds of things from Cawood Publishing, worldofmere.com. Make sure to check it out. But right now, we need an update on the current Kickstarter. Please tell me it's going to be awesome.
So Monsters of Phalanx 2 is the latest Kickstarter, and everything's basically done for the most part except the art. So we have about 30 illustrations done, and now we need about 90 more. So we're hoping that gets done over the next 2.5 months or so. We'll give the artists lots of time, and it's a really fun part of the process because you get to see these descriptions and all these creatures in the new book come to life as part of our monster series. So that's the 5th book. And I've actually also just decided to change paths for the 6th book. I was going to do something quite different, and I've changed my mind. And the book that I was going to do after that for monsters, I've decided to do this time. So I've actually just started working on the 6th book, writing the text for it.
Nice.
So and we can probably announce that later this year, around the time the 5th book, around the time Phalanx 2 is finished, we can announce what the next book will be.
Monsters of the 80s movies.
Yeah. Since I've moved to the suburbs a year ago, I was thinking about doing Monsters of the Suburbs. So,
well, it's kind of funny that
but we're not
that
really doing that.
Well, no, of course not. Shh. You have to put out those little tiny bits of misinformation just to keep things, I mean,
Yeah.
you're basically creating like miniature Marvel movies, so you don't want to spoil stuff too early on. But this week we're talking about Barbarians, which is a class of characters where, in my view, are tanks. They basically are designed to take damage and absorb it while still remaining on their feet and being able to, continue to kick ass on the battlefield. So let's start, because I have lots to say about Barbarians.
Sure. Yeah, I know this is one of your favorite classes. So we're talking about the muscular primal warrior, usually scantily clad, definitely not wearing heavy armor. No plate armor for this warrior, and usually many times depicted with a huge two-handed sword or a great axe or big war hammer, and very much a comic kind of figure, a cartoon sort of figure. Um, Although there is some uh, connection to the Viking people and that sort of idea as well. The idea though that they rage in battle, so they're this furious warrior in battle, but sort of become to mean that they're angry all the time, which is not really true. I mean, you could make a character like that, but the idea is that these warriors, I mean, they're definitely confrontational people usually, but their rage is in battle. That's where they sort of, and in a way, it's not so much that they're angry. In a way, it's that they're so fully present and they're very passionate, and the rage part is part of the combat. It's not necessarily part of the whole warrior, because you couldn't be a warrior like that. You wouldn't be very effective.
Well, exactly, because I mean, if you're just wandering around and grumping all the time, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that'll just either be put off by it and be like, "Oh, whatever," but then
Yeah.
you'll actually potentially terrify people because, you know, I've always I've never really had a solid picture of what a rage looks like,
Right.
except in battle. And
Exactly.
basically, you just kind of like you're pounding your pecs and you're swinging a bit more fierce, and you just got this angry sort of really you know kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but raging while like walking around the marketplace. I mean, like, what does that look like? Is that you just like, that's too expensive. Let's do half that.
Yeah. It's part of the simplification of some of the classes in D&D where things get stereotyped into certain aspects get stereotyped, where other things they're true, like they're connected to an archetype. That's different. Like they are a primal warrior. That's what they are. So notable barbarians, of course, we all start off with Conan, Conan the Barbarian in comics and then in movies. And the comics actually go back to the 1930s. And a
Really?
character that shows up later in Conan, a female barbarian, is Red Sonja, who actually was inspired by a character from the 1930s, but was only published in the 70s. So there's two really good examples of the primal warrior. They have no very little armor, and they are very present in battle and furious warriors. Another one would be John Carter of Mars. So there's a movie
Yeah.
that was really panned and now has kind of developed a cult following after hitting streaming services. And it's
Really?
not that bad, actually. There's some really good parts to it. Um, so he's barbarian like as well in some ways. You've got some of the original books that D&D was based on. There's some characters in there that are barbarians. And then you have the Nords in Skyrim in the video game. Those are
Yeah.
definitely barbarian types, many of them. And then in a more lighthearted way, Bobby the Barbarian in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which I think we talked about before, that people who are, it depends how old you are, how you look at it, because I think when that came out, I was already, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 or something. And to me, like I wasn't into kids' cartoons anymore. And I was kind of looking forward to something pretty cool. And then this goofy cartoon showed up. But I understand people who are a little bit younger than me or 5 or 10 years younger. They were really young kids when it came out, and it must have been pretty cool. And a lot of them have fond memories of it. So I think it depends sort of how old you are, to a certain degree. So
I
yeah,
had
there's a
a lot of younger friends, like people I had to look after school, that kind of thing,
yeah.
and I was subjected to the D&D cartoon, the Transformers, more often He-Man, because I was sort of at that point I was already 12, that sort of realm, and they were about 3 4 years younger, and so they were really into it, and I remember at the time kind of going, ah, god, whatever. And then just recently, like we're talking like 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
I discovered that the entire show
Yep,
has been published on YouTube by the
yep,
publisher, and watching it from the adult perspective is it's so different. Like you know that it's this is kind of lame, whatever. But there's some sort of I don't know. There's this nostalgic filter that sort of drops over that says, you know what, it's not great, but it's okay, and you should watch it. So yeah, I've watched a few episodes in the last few weeks, and I'm enjoying it because it's so hokey and corny, and it makes no sense half the time. It's like, didn't they just say that character couldn't do that thing, and then the character just did the thing they said he whatever, and then you
yeah,
just kind of enjoy it for what it is.
yeah. And it's funny to hear those voices. Some of the voices are, some of the main characters are very iconic actors from back in the
Yeah,
70s and 80s. So, like Ralph Malph from Happy Days is one of the characters.
the
Um,
kid for the guy who was
Willie
in
Ames,
Willie
Willie's
Ames. Yes,
Ames,
that's the
yeah,
one.
he's, and there's a couple others that are fairly well known, but I can't remember the other people right now. Um, Yeah, so there's lots of barbarians, especially like I said in comics and cartoons, many examples of them. So the class also wasn't one of the original D&D uh, classes. So it wasn't in the original rules, but not too long into D&D, they came out with this book called Unearthed Arcana, which were all these little extras you could put into your game. And Drive Through RPG still publishes a version of that, just with a different cover right here. And in the Unearthed Arcana, they brought you the Barbarian class. I think it actually had been published in Dragon Magazine before that. And then
Right.
the official introduction was in Unearthed Arcana. So the Barbarian has been around for quite a while. In 5e, it's got the best hit points. You're using a fabulous D12, so you've got some sizable hit points, more than any other class. Again, the armor, you can only use light or medium, but you can use shields. A lot of people forget that. And we'll talk about in a moment, they get a bonus for armor that boosts their armor quite a bit, even though they can't use heavy armor. The weapons, it says simple and martial. Well, all weapons are either simple or martial, so they can use any weapon. Um, their skills, they can use two from animal handling, athletics, intimidation, nature, perception, and survival. So there is a connection to a certain degree to the ranger in that they are usually quite connected to the land. And as I said, a very primal warrior. So
Right.
that makes sense. Those skills are very well connected. Their features, the main one Shane talked about earlier, is the ability to rage, where you get advantage on your checks and saves, which they might call test rolls in the future. You also get resistance to basic attack damage. Um, then there's the armor bonus, which means if you wear no armor, your AC is equal to 10 plus your con modifier and your dex modifier, which is really good. Like if you have 18 con and 18 dexterity, that means your armor class is 18. And you don't have you're not wearing anything. I mean, as far as
And
armor,
that's
and
before a shield too, which is
yeah,
nice.
throw it a shield, and now you're at 20. So you can have a really good armor class. Another feature is a reckless attack, which is sort of, it has a pro and a con. The pro is that you have advantage to attack. The con is that your enemies have advantage to attack you. There's danger sense. So again, the connection to being very present in battle. The barbarian has advantage to on deck saves, like if a trap goes off, to notice them, which is very useful in D&D.
Yeah.
You get an extra attack later. You have fast movement, not as much as a monk, but you have benefits for moving quicker as you increase in level. You get extra damage if you do a critical attack later. And then there's some other high level features like your rage improves, your strength check improves. And when you're 20th level, your strength and con can go up by 4 to a maximum of 24.
That is kind of awesome.
But already you're 20th level. So we've got two subclasses in the player's handbook, which are called primal paths. And then there's more in some of the additional books. I think Shane has played some of those other versions.
Yeah, I've played primarily the ones coming out of Tash's book, I think. No, actually, no. Xanathar.
Probably Xanathar.
Yeah, and just because I have played Berserker before and Totem Warrior so many times, I just in the last few years, I've been like, I just need something different. I need to try it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. So as you said, the Berserker is the main one. So this is a barbarian who uses violence and thrills in the chaos of battle, which really is most barbarians, no matter what path you're on. So their features, you can make an attack with a bonus action under frenzy, which is super useful. Um, you can't be charmed or frightened with mindless rage, so you're just fully focused. And you can actually have the ability to frighten other people at a higher level.
Yeah.
The other path is the path of the Totem Warrior, which is a connection to spirit animals, having them as your guide, your protector, or your inspiration. and I believe they are wolf, bear, and eagle. I
Yeah.
think that's the main options. So your features, you can actually speak with animals and have beast sense at a low level. And then later on, there's some more advanced features that connect to your spirit animal, including the ability to cast some spells. Um, like you can cast Speak with Animals, I said, at an early level. Later on, you can cast Commune with Nature. And then at a very high level, again, there's a few other more complicated features, which we won't go into here because it will take too long. Because each spirit animal, you have there's different features, like for wolf, for bear, for eagle. Um,
Right. Right.
so one is more spiritual and connected to the land, the Totem Warrior and nature, and one is more pure warrior. And then
You know,
there's a storm barbarian, right? Storm Path
yeah.
of the Storm Herald, I think it's called, or ancestral. And then there's an ancestral subclass. There's a few different extra ones. So pros, obviously, the physical prowess of this warrior. You can take so much damage. You can do a lot of damage. Um, you're the definition of tank. I think because you're such a focused character, like every turn you're pretty much going to try to close in on the enemy and have melee combat, right? Because you're so
Yeah.
focused, I think that actually opens up the role playing even more because there's so much more the you know what I mean? The mechanics are so simple in how you're playing the game, your character for your character, that you can actually add more as far as your personality. Because the barbarians you've played, in my opinion, have had so much personality.
Well, exactly, because I mean that's the thing is that I try to avoid being the tank for the simplicity of just being a tank. Um, like there's the ones that I normally have: Storm Herald, Wild Magic. I think the latest one I've been playing is a Zealot.
Hmm.
Um, but there's also a Battle Rager, uh, Biz- uh, Battle Rager and Ancestral Guardian. Ancestral Guardian I've tried out I think once. But I've forgotten the Battle Rager was a thing because that's actually from the Coast Adventurers guide, Sword Coast Adventures guide, and I have the book, but it's like one of the first ones that came out as a supplement that I keep forgetting about it because Xanathar became everything for quite a bit of stuff. So, um, Battle Rage would be interesting because it does have a limitation, I believe, of a dwarf. You have to be a dwarf only, which I thought is kind of interesting.
Hmm.
They have special armor and a few other things, but essentially, yeah. I mean, the thing is that I as a player, I'm trying a lot of the time to try to play against the type of that particular class, or
Right.
or even the species of the race, because there's going to be there's so many traps and defaults to fall into that every so often, yeah, fine, okay, I'll play a round and then I'll be like, and I'm just going to be this thing because I'm tired or I'm distracted or whatever, life gets in the way. But when you're actually present and focused and really getting into it, um, being able to kind of look at the character as you were saying, like with a personality and some humanity to it, that you don't have or sorry, you can avoid falling into the sort of saw that before, have seen
Hmm.
this, oh, okay, of course you're going to climb up on his face and stab him in the face, those kinds of things. But you can try really and come up with creative ways. And I say this all the time, but essentially being able to unlock some creativity and being able to look at what you're doing, instead of focusing entirely on the class, focus on the situation and how that class actually fits or
Hmm.
doesn't fit. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like I'm a barbarian and I'm a half orc. I'm gonna now climb through this. Oh, I can't. What do you mean I can't climb through this crevice? Oh, we got to send the halfling. Ah, man. But maybe there's a way that you could create a way to get through it, and just kind of play with those kinds of ideas. But yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. I
because
just I just I just like this class a lot.
yeah, didn't so you started out. I think your first character with that was a barbarian. Was it Raven, the human barbarian?
Yeah, Raven the human barbarian. Yeah.
So, and what was he like? He was
He
pretty much like
was,
Conan, wasn't he? Like similar.
yeah, he was actually, I think he was a Totem Warrior,
Hmm.
uh, with the idea that he was going to be a sort of a a character that was. Here's the thing: he didn't get too far, which sucks.
Well,
But it was basically trying to be like a bear, sort of the big gentle giant kind of idea,
right.
and that's kind of what I was going for. But I didn't he die in like the third session? He died early on.
No, I don't think it was too early because you started out in the south part of Mir down by the coast, and you were kind of like what's the word? You were I can't. My brain's frozen. You were smugglers. That's what you were, and
Right.
no,
Yeah.
you eventually,
Was it?
much later on, you made it out to the old wood on a. You were going on a trip, and you were ambushed by a huge group, a big horde of goblins.
Yeah.
But I would have guessed he probably would have been between eighth and 10th level at least, because that campaign went to 20th level. So I think you were probably, yeah, maybe even 10th level, maybe a bit higher.
Well, I know that he went down and no one could get to me, and I ended up
Yeah,
basically bleeding out because the we were spread out in like a foresty area, and people
yeah.
were hiding in the trees and things like that.
Yeah,
But
it was one of those don't split the party. Like, yeah, people were just too
yeah,
far away. Yeah,
that
yeah.
is so true.
And then I think you took a little break from barbarians, but you had a halfling barbarian too that I think he's still active, right?
Was that the one that was the, or was that the fighter? I had a halfling that was like a promoter, and I can't remember if he was a barbarian or not.
Yeah, I think he was a fighter.
He was a fighter, but it said, yeah. I mean, I did take a break from barbarians after that, because I just wanted to shake it up.
Oh,
But
actually, no. Your second one was Othello, wasn't he? Oh no, was he a fighter?
he
Orello,
was
Orello,
Arello
not
was a
Othello.
was he the giant?
He, yeah, well,
Not
like
the giant,
Goliath.
the Goliath, yeah. No, he was, yeah, he was just a fighter because
Oh, okay, because
he
he
was
was quite
originally a
barbarian
dancer.
like, right?
Well, it's true, just because he was so big, and I
Yeah,
made him so that he was like basically an albino with a very large sort of red tattoo that went across his whole body.
yeah.
But
And he
but
didn't
yeah,
wear much. He wore like a loincloth and
yeah, he was basically the least you could wear without being completely
yeah,
nude.
yeah.
But
So
yeah,
then
I
you
mean
had a
that
halfling.
he was barbarian like, yeah.
Yeah. So then the next one would have been the halfling that you have now. I think he's still going, right?
Yep. Yep, he's still running. That's Halric.
Yeah.
Um,
He's in the dragon campaign, correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
he's actually done quite well. He's done some. I think there's been a couple times where, uh, basically either finished a battle, like just basically raged out and like whacked a bunch of people, because he's carrying. Because that's the one thing about him being a halfling is that he can't carry like a giant a weapon. He has to
Yeah.
carry something slightly smaller.
Yeah.
And I think he had didn't. I think he picked up some sort of magical weapon of some sort at some point.
I think it's a
Um,
magical weapon that actually is large, but it enables him to use it.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thank you for. But it definitely makes a difference because he was only, I think he only had an axe or something, or like a small axe of some sort when he
Yeah.
first started out. But it's been a challenge. I mean, he's a hard character to play because he's basically like this miniature angry cat. Really, you throw the cat in water and the cat freaks out and
Yeah.
claws
Yeah.
everything. But he's not, I'm also trying to play him, and I hope I have successfully, knock on wood, to not be like previous barbarians, because I've had a lot of barbarians or sort of stronger characters that have been uh, very interested in sort of peace and love and all that kind of stuff, and this guy is
Yeah.
more of a bit of a grump, which I'm kind of enjoying.
Yeah. And
But
he's been a
yeah,
big help to that party. He's dealt out a lot of damage. He's taken down a lot of the big bad evil guys. And isn't he one of your
and
two characters who likes to climb up large creatures and attack their heads?
Well, yeah, he has. If many years ago, when I was doing a lot of improv theater, we had a show where people would go and lightly poke fun at sort of the default things that we did on stage, and mine
Yeah,
was just magically pulling things out of a backpack and whatever I needed for a particular scene. But that climbing of the face thing is my D&D equivalent. Is like going, "Oh, you're really big. Okay, I'm going to climb up and I get right into your face and I'm going to stab you repeatedly until you leave us alone."
yeah,
Um, which has worked out quite often, but there have been some creatures that have grappled me and like just thrown me off like I was just nothing. So, what can you do?
yeah. Yeah. So I have not played a lot of classes because I've been DMing for so long, and I haven't played a barbarian, but I've made a lot of barbarian NPCs, including ones that have confronted your party. Um, I would say, as far as the cons, again, the bonus, a pro is that they're very physical and strong and powerful, but sometimes that can be a negative because they're not as into ranged combat and obviously have no magic. Um, they also don't have easy ways usually to get out of combat, so they're usually right in the middle of the melee combat, which is the most dangerous place to be. They're not going to be any use like the wizard hanging back 60 feet or 100 feet. Um,
Or they have trouble getting into battle because my latest barbarian is a halfling. There have been times where the villain has misty stepped away, and it's like,
yeah,
ah, well, how far can you go? I'm gonna dash. What can you do next? Nothing, because I've dashed. I've got. It's like,
yeah,
and then the character does it again, and it's like, ah.
yeah, yeah. So dealing with creatures that have magic and dealing with a rogue, for example, who can constantly use a bonus action to disengage or a bonus action to dash would be difficult for a barbarian. Dealing with rogues or sometimes spellcasters is a challenge. Um, I think also people sometimes focus so much on the combat. It's just like it's like that meme from The Simpsons where there's Bart and there's the whole class of kids, and it's like, say the line, Bart. And for a barbarian, it would be like, I hit it with my sword again.
I
So
feel
to
very much like that about fighters, to be honest. And and we
yeah,
talked about them first, and
yeah,
uh, I have to say that every so often I do get nervous about being a halfling because it's kind of like that thing where it's like the kids in the schoolyard. The one kid reaches out, just holds onto the top of the other character's head, and it's like, I'll get you when I can get close enough. But there you go. Not to put
yeah.
ideas in your head, but still.
I won't. I'm not sure what you were talking about, and I just write down some notes here. Yeah, so I think there's pros and cons for sure, but overall, it's a pretty fun class. Really useful to have one in your party. Any kind of tank, if it's a fighter, barbarian, or cleric kind of is a tank in fifth edition. Fighter, paladin,
Yeah.
ranger to a certain degree, but definitely barbarians, paladins, fighters are tanks that every party can use for sure. You actually
Yeah,
have
totally.
had some parties in our group where there's been no tank, which has been really interesting. We've had parties where there's a sorcerer, there's a rogue, there's a bard, and there's maybe a wizard like that. Where we have had that. We've had a party where
Yeah.
the highest strength is like 11 or 10 or 11 in the entire party.
We've also had issues sometimes where you have like uh, a barbarian has really no ability to heal unless they find an item or they're carrying around 5 potions of healing.
Yeah.
But we've had parties on the opposite end where they haven't had any healing, and could you imagine, or very little healing, and like having a barbarian that has no one to back them up
Yeah.
is kind of scary. Like you can't if you can't
Yeah.
heal except for resting, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. Well, that's why back in the day for D&D, everybody used to say that, every party should have a cleric, and
Yeah.
or a paladin, because it really does make a huge difference. Although now in 5e, a few other classes of healing, uh, which I would take away. I would take those things away. I would just leave it with clerics and paladins, because right now I think the ranger can heal, um, the bard can heal, probably the druid. There's a few, right? The paladin can, well, yeah, no, that's the original. Original game is cleric and paladin were the healers.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I think one of the reasons too that you always have a cleric is that uh, the gods used to be a bigger part of the game too, and the pantheon of the setting. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really interesting part of D&D, and it's not as popular it seems these days. In fact, the video for our series here for Two Wizards and a Mic, I think the lowest watched video is the one about clerics.
Well, I mean, it's you make a good point about uh, having that kind of balance in a party of making sure you have something of everything. You hope, um, because if you look at any video game these days, in terms of like, because the popularity of the video game realm of battle royale has been around for a few years now.
Yeah,
Um, but the ones that rise to the top, the ones that are very, 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 very popular, you'll if you actually look at them and the sort of classes they have for these characters, um, they have that split balance. They try to give you a couple of classes that have some healing, a couple of classes that are really the tanks that have big guns or weapons or whatever they are,
mhm,
um, and because when you're playing those kinds of games, you definitely have the need, like, oh my god, I hope we have a thing,
yeah,
a healer specifically. Like I play this one game where there's a class that's a healer. There's actually a couple, but one is specifically like a medic, and that saves the team from time to time where
yeah,
everyone's been knocked down, they need to be raised up, and this healer comes along, and this healer has the ability to heal multiple people at the same time. So if you don't have that in that particular game, then you're in trouble. You can be in trouble because you don't have anyone's ability to save, basically to save you. I mean, that's really what it is. Because
yeah,
if you're against like a dragon, or you're against something very, very big, um, you're going to have your tank. Your tank will go down. They're like guaranteed, unless they play a bit. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to back off now. Hopefully not get hit by an opportunity attack, or not get hit from another side, because that's the one problem that happens is that barbarians specifically and fighters too get ganged up on because they're right into the melee, because they're not ranged classes, so they have to get right into the meat of the battle. And if you have, oh, this skeleton's going to come over here, oh, this skeleton's coming over here too, and you're suddenly having to fight 3 4 different adversaries at the same time, then you're just messed up. Like it's especially if you roll badly. I mean, I've had
yeah.
that happen where my character's gone down because the rolls I made, it's like, I rolled a 2. Well, that's not going to hit anything. I've rolled a 1. Wonderful. Or I rolled really low. Or it's like, I got a 13. Now you need 14 to hit. But then of course their turn comes around, and then you cry.
Yeah, party balance. I mean, it helps. Obviously, I mean, it just makes it's just the facts. However, as a DM, I mean, I would the way I do it is I let the players choose whoever they want, but they should know what the other players are doing, and then
Yeah.
then decide. And if you end up with a class that has, for example, like two bards, a rogue, and a sorcerer, maybe, the chances are that party is not going to do very well. Um, if you have some healing there, but you have no tank, um, you have no cleric, no paladin. There are definitely parties that are better, um, that are better built. If you have a tank and you have a cleric or paladin, and then you have some kind of good spellcaster, after that, it doesn't really matter. If you have those three, you kind of already. I mean, the rogue, I guess, helps too. So, I mean, I think that basic balance, and that's why they have those classes. So if you have a tank, a cleric, or a paladin, um, you've got a wizard or a sorcerer or warlock, and then you have a rogue. Then you've got everything for the most part. Um, you can throw in bard there if you want to have a little bit of charming, and the bard is the jack of all trades, right? So they can kind of do everything.
Right.
So yeah, um, it does obviously help, but I don't think there's too many DMs that force their players and say, "You guys, there's no cleric yet. You have to be a cleric or a paladin," even though it does help. It's just,
I don't
you
think
know,
I've ever run into any game except well, years ago where a DM actually said, well, I remember playing a game where I got into a fight. I was probably about 15. Got into a shouting match with the DM because they were insisting that the characters had to be certain classes and had to be certain, I had to play a certain way. And I'm like, well, what's the point of playing? Like, why
yeah.
are we here? And I've had, experiences where um, I remember actually a session that I attended the session probably about for a year, and we kept dying constantly, all the time. And we didn't actually know why. The story hadn't been told. It was all a big mystery. And every time I had to roll a new character, I'm like, okay, can this character somehow be connected to the story that you're trying to tell us? Because we're kind of in the dark and we keep getting killed. And, a couple times is okay. Five's a bit extreme because, we're suddenly running into zombies all the time and we don't know why the zombies are there, but you're not giving us anything to actually, we're just wandering the landscape. We have
Hmm.
no direction. And it was so sad. And, and the characters that were healers were kind of not great because they were just as frustrated, so they weren't really making an effort to be like, I guess we should play as a party, but I'll be dead by the end of the session or maybe next session and I'll have to roll someone else. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
ah. So yeah, those definitely, I mean, that's all to say having a natural balance really really helps. It's not necessary, but it does help the party live longer. And when somebody does die, it actually means something. Like it actually
hmm
has an impact.
hmm
Because if you're constantly, if you're all tanks or you're all halflings or whatever, I mean, how many times we all encountered playing the game, you've encountered a party of elves or a party of halflings or a party of this. And then and they all end up dying because they're all fighters. So they're all this, so they're all that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. There are a lot of encounters where the NPCs are all one group or one type of skill, right? Which
Yeah,
helps the heroes. So why would you do that the other way around, right? Yeah,
exactly. And it
yeah,
also makes
very
it more
true.
fun.
Yeah,
And even
very
if you
true.
have parties that have a lack of something, uh, the DM is generally going to recognize that, and they will either be kind or they will be like, okay, I'm going to have an NPC kind of take on some of this stuff
Yeah,
so that you
yep,
guys don't die early. And then as, levels up, then, maybe it's okay after a while. But,
yeah,
or
yeah.
you find
Sometimes
an
I do that
entire
where,
chest of 25 health potions.
yeah,
Yay!
yeah, I do that sometimes where I'll have an NPC who has yeah, like you say, a potion of healing. I'll do that once in a while, but I won't let it go on for too long. But once in a while, I might do that to help give a little push. Yeah, so we talk about party balance, and we've talked about every class except for two, I believe. So we have
Sorcerers.
sorcerers and warlocks to go. Yeah,
I think I've never played a sorcerer, but I do recall. Did I ever? I think I might have played a warlock once, but I don't remember. Or maybe I
yeah.
thought
Well,
it was
what
a
were you,
warlock.
one tiefling you had for sure was a bard. What was the other tiefling? Oh, was it a
I
ranger?
I think it was a ranger. I'd have to look that
Yeah,
up though, but I'm pretty sure it was a ranger.
yeah. You
Um,
might not have played a warlock. We've had actually, I was going to say we haven't had that many, but what's happened is we've had the same players play warlocks a few times,
yeah,
um, or at
I know
least
we had
twice. I think.
one. We had one warlock I think, that was had wild. It was the first time I ever encountered a character that had wild magic. The whole
Right.
wild magic thing is that a
Oh no,
warlock?
wild magic is sorcerer.
Is it sorcerer? Yeah. So
Yeah.
somebody in our party did played a sorcerer then, and that fascinated me because there was this thing because you have that the mechanic where
Yeah.
if they roll badly or whatever the mechanic is, I can't remember off the top of
Yeah.
my head, and then something happens and it's like,
A random
all right,
magical
we're gonna
effect.
roll this
Yeah.
dice. Oh look, you are all teleported into hell, or
Yeah.
something weird, or something that's like you see a butterfly fly by. It's
Oh
like,
yeah. I love it. I love it. There's a table in the player's handbook for that wild magic random effect for sorcerers. And then I made my own for the world of Mir. And one of them was that you turn into cheese. And that happened not that long ago. But my favorite, I don't know, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before, but I'm going to do it again. My favorite was when Wild Magic went off, and this sorcerer in one of our very early games was running across the rooftops,
oh
and
yeah,
Wild Magic went off, and he turned into a pot. So the halfling rogue that he was chasing just ran over and kicked him off the roof. Somehow he survived too, because he went well. He fell off the roof. I think he was probably unconscious after that because you weren't very high level. But somebody healed him, probably because there was a cleric or paladin in the party, and he survived that, which could have killed your. I mean, he was only. I'm going to guess he was first or second level. His character, and that character ended up going to 20th level, a 20th level sorcerer. So his character could have ended a lot. His career path could have ended a lot earlier. Yeah.
I love random stuff like that. But we will
Sometimes
talk
it's
more
great.
about random stuff next time.
Yes.
Um, but so oh my god. Hi. At the end of the day, it's just a game, which is what I was trying to get out of my brain. But so next, what is the next big update for the Kickstarter? Yeah, are you talking like another month maybe of work and then
Oh, how long will it be?
yeah,
Well, we're just waiting. The art is going to take probably 2.5 months or so to finish. So we're hoping that the PDF will be ready mid to late December, or sorry, mid to late November, and then the hopefully the hardcover books will be ready in December. So yeah,
nice.
that's yeah, that doesn't have too far to go. And then in the meantime, I'm working on our World of Mir book, which is going to put all 9 continents together in one book.
Nice.
And quite a bit of that is done because we published the first 3 continents. So we're going to update that because there's some errors in there and some changes. And then we're also working on the new monster book, which, like I told you, I've decided what it's going to be. So I've started writing that over the last few days, and I hope to have that text, a lot of that done by the end of the year.
Well, that will I'm looking forward to it because as we're coming out of COVID, or at least coming to a place where we can all live with COVID,
Yeah,
and it becomes background noise, that we'll all be like in a table, on a by a table, playing on a
yeah, yeah.
table, and that I'm excited about. So, thank you everyone for listening or watching, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We're also on. Actually, you know what? If you want to know anything about this podcast, go to worldofmere.com. It's a good website, and you should go there and find out more.
And
But
all the
as
links are below. Yeah.
yes, all the things are down there, just or up there, wherever they might be, and we'll see you guys next week for Sorcerers. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Later.